The first thought of France that come up in conversation topics usually revolve around Paris, the national team, which I'm a fan of, riots, the scenery, etc. The country prides itself for being the #1 top tourist destination in the world, but despite that title, very few people, aside from residents and native speakers, have a vested interest in politics. As Macron is counting his last days in office, the country is slowly fracturing itself. People have a vested interest in choosing their sides correctly. On one side you have the far left, LFI, NFP, and on the other hand you got the far right, National Rally and Reconquête, all with different ideas on how to lead France. But the unintended consequences leaves one group particularly vulnerable and left behind: Black people.
J'ai été stupéfaite, j'avais pas les mots en fait. J'avais du mal à croire que c'était possible. Comment une personne s'est levée un matin, s'est dit je vais écrire toutes ces lignes-là.
Scapegoated for everything, blamed for everything. They have the short end of the stick in every area. It's exactly unclear the exact number of Black people living in France, as it's illegal to census race, but approximately 3 to 6 million Black folks call the country home in a country of 68 million. I'm no mathematician, but it's quite clear they are in a minority. Those folks are mostly concentrated in urban areas, more notably Île-de-France and more specifically in Seine-Saint-Denis. As a result, two things usually happen. They fall in a life of crime, which we all know of, or they become more and more resilient, and you start seeing a lot of breakthrough of Black folks in sports, arts, music, and more recently, politics. Last week we had the pleasure to see the French municipal elections, and we saw a record number of Black mayors being sworn in. 12. Now that's not a lot, but given the context, it is a breakthrough.
Bassi Konaté, tête de liste citoyenne soutenue par LFI, l'emporte largement. Plus qu'une victoire, c'est tout un symbole pour ce Français d'origine malienne.
This is a shift in cultural identity. French no longer means traditional white man. It comes in all form of color. The question begs, what can Black French learn from African Americans to gain more economic and political weight in the country they call home? Before we continue into today's video, I'm going to explain the challenges that Black people face on a daily basis that hinder their progression. First off, taxes. For example's sake, I'm going to assume that taxes and social contribution, despite being two different legal categories, as being the same. Since the government is taking it either way, you might as well consider it a tax. Now that includes income tax, social contributions, gift tax, inheritance tax, whatever tax that the government can get a hold of, they take it. Now that seriously hinders the economic progression because the number represents close to 50% of their GDP, 45% to be exact. So that means whatever money they make, the government takes close to half of it. Let that sink in. So obviously that means that they have one of the highest tax burdens in the world. The second issue presented is xenophobia in the guise of protecting our culture. The French pride themselves by consuming this one media, CNews. CNews is the French equivalent of Fox News. CNews is what Fox News would be if Arcom, the French equivalent of the FCC, wasn't up their ass. They tiptoe around the issue, but people understand the underlying narrative, and if brought in court, it can't be legally proved.
Bali Bagayoko face à Nice que Jean-Luc Mélenchon fera dans la France de 2027 s'il est aux responsabilités.
Now they have somebody who's worse. She's sort of incompetent. She's not very smart, but she's very radical. Very radical.
On the other hand, Fox News non-live reporting is straight up propaganda entertainment.
How can you possibly talk about Venezuela? We're talking about Denmark. But you know what? As Shakespeare said, There's something rotten in Denmark.
As long as they don't defame and incite violence, they're all good. And I made sure to use the word defame and not lie, even though colloquially speaking, they appear the same. But they're not. Defame means attacking someone's character with lies, and lying is misrepresenting the truth and leaving it up to viewers to garner their own opinion. Their common theme is protect their culture, whatever that means. Look, I'm all for deporting criminals and overstayers, integration, heck, even criminalizing criminals. I don't give a shit. But protecting the culture sounds a bit too nationalistic and pandering towards white supremacy.
My family was! Who was working the farms? They were poor! Do you know how much a slave cost back then?
White supremacists cling onto that idea to justify their hate and mediocre life. There is a point to be made in countries like Albania, Greece, Kosovo, but given the historical context, France already de facto adopted a multiculturalist society, but for X, Y, Z reason refused to back it up legally, like in countries such as Canada or even the US. Now the question begs, how did Black French end up in this love-hate relationship? The presence of Black people in France dates back all the way back in the early 1800s. At the time, the country had to sell one of their most lucrative territorial possessions to not face bankruptcy. As a result, they needed to find elsewhere to find more economic areas where they can exploit. Algeria, Indochina, Sub-Saharan Africa. They went on a mission to send out settlers to conquer their territory and teach French their values, liberté, égalité, fraternité, and their local traditions, no matter how inconsistent it is with the local people's values. The main goal was civilize the savages and extract as much resource as possible. So technically speaking, since those territories were French, the locals had the opportunities to move to the mainland despite being unequal. World War I and World War II exasperated that issue, and it pushed for more mass migration, and more Black folks were in the front lines of soldiers and worked in factories. Even after decolonization, more Black folks from former colonies move up to the mainland to support the local economy. Before we continue on the mayoral situation in France, I just gotta make one point clear. Even dating back to colonialism, Black folks had the shorter end of the stick. And you would think even after decolonization, they would achieve equality. But no, inequality still remains. I will give credit where credit is due. They made effort to correct the legal aspect, but failed to correct the ramifications. And the concept of liberté, égalité, fraternité makes it hard to count the exact number of Black folks living in France, so the issue gets often swept under the rug. Everyone knows it's a problem, but no one has the balls to fix the issue. So that's why they are in the face front of every issue. And other Black folks either distance themselves or pinpoint the blame elsewhere. But things are changing. They are no longer the face front of ghetto culture. A few weeks ago, we saw a record number of Black mayors being sworn in. I call this new era the 1965 post-Jim Crow 2.0, because we are seeing something new, and I love to see it. Now the question begs, what could Black French learn from African Americans? Alright, I came up with some solutions that the French government could implement that could substantially help Black people. Drumroll please. Here are some of the long-awaited solutions. CRT and DEI, Charlie Kirk's worst nightmare.
Do you think that we should have all test scores be weighed the same? Or do you think that certain ethnic groups should get certain points because of their race?
First of all, let me explain to you what is DEI. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. In layman terms, it means giving fair treatment and fair access to communities historically underrepresented and discriminated. I highly believe it's going to help Black people access strategic positions and gain more economic and political weight in their country. It substantially helped the black folks get better jobs, more opportunities in the US post Jim Crow era. And CRT, what is CRT? Buzzwords that gets thrown around mainly by Charlie Kirk when he was alive.
Call everything racist till you control it.
CRT stands for Critical Race Theory, and it's a study that studies systemic racism and systemic inequality. I highly believe that it is something that needs to be implemented, and it's going to shape a better understanding about the historical context on black folks living in the country. Another solution that could be implemented and that was implemented in other countries is neoliberal economic policies. Those policies aim to slash taxes, slash social programs, and I know it's not popular, but let me make a point. In countries such as Canada or even the UK, they implemented policies like Thatcherism, and those policies substantially lowered taxes, and they helped businesses implement themselves and employ more people. So having low taxes is going to be very beneficial for the community and help employ people and have them have more economic weight in their country. And last policy I'd say is multiculturalism. Now, whether you like it or not, given the historical context, France already de facto adopted a multiculturalist society by colonizing the whole planet. So being French means being Caribbean, being French means white, being French means Arab, being French means black, being French means Vietnamese. Being French has different definitions. So I truly believe that multiculturalism is something that needs to be adopted. Historically speaking, black French people had the shorter end of the stick. Adopting these policies I proposed is going to be very beneficial to the country, but I do recognize it's going to be challenging. Because traditionally speaking, French equals whiteness, and unintentionally, the laws makes it harder to recognize the issue. That's why I believe white French people should be encouraged to do the same thing like white Americans did in the 1960s. Times are changing. The way that I see this issue is kind of like a business. Balance the short-term needs with the long-term mission and vision. And the mission and vision should constantly be evolving. African Americans are a distinct ethnic group as they pave way for success for other minority groups. Pure Africans, Arabs, Latinos, Asians, traditionally non-white but fair-skinned ethnic groups pandered towards white culture. And if America is where it is, it's because of white Americans that recognize their privilege in African Americans. African Americans paved the success for other minorities in France. And I think that it's time for black French people to do the same. That's all for today. See you next time.